Progressives are losing everything. And those things that they aren't losing, they think they're losing. Hi, I'm Scott Ott, and this is Right Angle with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green. And gentlemen, it just occurred to me the other day while I was listening to NPR. I'm sorry, I just can't say it. So I'm listening to NPR and I'm hearing this report about recycling and how poorly that's going and how the tide of incoming, newly manufactured plastic products is far outstripping our ability to deal with them, and how recycling really has been a bust because there's no real market or aftermarket for those products. And then I heard another story about how poorly the fight against, they have a new report about climate change, and basically they're saying, if we can only reduce our, what do they call that? The greenhouse gases. If we can only reduce our carbon production into the atmosphere by an impossible amount every year from now to eternity, then we may stave off the destruction of the planet. And so they know that that can't be done. I just looked up the numbers. After how many years now of Obamacare, 30 million Americans still don't have health insurance. This was supposed to take care of that. Now they say, well, half of those people could have it if they wanted to. 15 million people don't want the insurance that Obamacare offers. So anyway, so those are things where they're actually losing. And then there are other areas where they think they're losing. For example, in race relations, they think America is getting much worse when it comes to race relations, and white cops are going out and hunting black people. And they think in feminists' rights, in female rights, that things are worse than ever and women aren't getting paid equally and there are not enough of them in the C-suites or in the boardrooms. And just things are bad all around. Meanwhile, there are a bunch of Americans out there who still love big trucks, fast cars, and guns. And so it just occurred to me, guys, that it must be horrible, Steve Green, to wake up every day as a progressive and either know or think that you're losing in every aspect of what you believe.
Well, I would like to show you my sad face for the progressive who thinks he's losing at everything. And there you have it.
Little squeak.
That's my sad face. What is it like, I wonder, to wake up every morning and go, there are things I haven't banned yet. Oh, dear God. It must be a miserable way to live. Democrats used to, or I should say the American left, used to be kind of the happy, fun side of the country, and Republicans had the reputation of being the green eye shade party of, how are we going to pay for all this? Well, now we have Republicans that don't worry about this stuff anymore, which is why we've got all this ballooning debt, even with GOP president and GOP Senate and Congress that was GOP. But back to the matter at hand here. But progressives, they exist on both the left and the right, but they're mostly on the left now. But progressives, you're just angry about stuff all the time. Nothing's good, nothing's right. And I really have to disagree with a part of your premise. I do agree that race relations are not getting worse. I do agree the women are doing far better in the workplace than progressives seem to think they are. But I disagree with the premise that this is progressives thinking they're losing. They thrive on racial discord. They thrive on ginning up tension between the sexes, especially in the workplace, but also at home, because this is one of their paths to political power. So when you say that they look at these things and think, oh no, we're losing. No. If they really believe, and I don't know if they do or not, but if they really believe that racial tensions are getting worse in this country, if they really believe that women are getting left behind in the workplace, then this is good for them. This is a win for them. This is something they can run on. This is something they can pass laws about. This is something they can slap regulations on. And it's exactly, Scott, what you see them doing in this presidential race. I can't think of a single candidate who isn't in some form or other running on how do I make other people do the things that my people think they should do instead of the things that they actually want to do. And that's progressivism in a nutshell. And Scott, that's why they're so unhappy. It's not whether they're winning or they're losing. It's that people remain people and will pursue their own interests and have their own fun. And they don't really give a damn what the progressives think about it.
And so, Bill Whittle, the other thing that must really get under their skin is the great success of capitalism. And by that, I mean that there are more and more people going over to the capitalist way around the world. If you look back in history, that tide is clearly shifting, even though conservatives here are all concerned about creeping socialism in the United States. Globally, more and more people, even the commie Chinese, have embraced communism. More and more people are yearning for prosperity and the things available in the capitalist West. There are more and more people fleeing from socialism and moving to capitalist countries, thus the immigration problems. And not to mention the fact that they've just come through a week of impeachment inquiry hearings in the House of Representatives at the House Intelligence Committee. And CNN's new poll says that compared to October, opinion about the impeachability of President Trump has changed not at all after a week of nonstop coverage. And Bill, to top it all off, Kanye has gone over to Jesus.
So there is some good news.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a lot actually going on here, Scotty. I think what we're really seeing now, and I've been watching this happen for several years, but it seems like it's accelerating. And I think that's the American people are just getting saturated. I think they're now at the actual definition of like saturation is when you cannot take on anymore, right? You just will not. You pour more sugar into this thing, it doesn't matter. All the molecules that can possibly be floating are floating. It is saturated. And I think that Americans have been told from the beginning that progressivism was about cleaning up the environment and getting mercury out of rivers. I'm down with that. Absolutely. I'm in favor of that. And equal rights for women in the vote, needless to say, in voting and same salaries. Absolutely. I'm down with that too. Always have been. And so on. And then since these problems, and this is the part that's actually really good news for us and bad news for them, since these problems are largely solved, they really are largely being solved. The country's far cleaner than it was in the 60s, far cleaner. And race relations are far better. The economic freedom of women is immeasurably better. And as I say, if you're a progressive, your fuel is injustice, because you're going to the American people and your entire pitch is that this is a terrible country and it's awful and it's done awful things. And if you vote for me, I'll fix it. But if it turns out that the country is in good shape, what do you need these progressives for? So since they run on injustice, and since there's not as much injustice as there used to be, not by a long shot, not even close, they have to manufacture synthetic injustice, which means they have to sit week after week after week after week, hunched over their computers, waiting for a policeman to shoot a black guy so that they can then show that this is an epidemic sweeping the nation, murdered on the streets every day. And then they'll have to sit and wait another 6 months until one of these freak occurrences happens and so on. But ultimately, when you get down to it, Scott, peak progressivism means that you have run into the limits of when people are no longer willing to perform the mental gymnastics necessary to be a progressive. See, that's the beautiful thing about conservatism. I'm in favor of making money. I think everybody should be free to make money. And so if I make money, that's great. If a millionaire makes money, that's great. If it turns out that somebody donates $300 million or I want to spend $300 million on my campaign for president, that's great. I don't have to demonize billionaires while I collect billions. I don't have to call for higher taxes while I tell my accountant to take every deduction possible. I don't have to scream about wanting open borders when I live in a house with private security in a gated compound. I don't have to do any of these. Oh, by the way, I don't have to call about getting guns recalled from the American people as I travel from place to place, making speeches provided with my own armed security. So all of it. And one more thing, I don't have to have a daughter who's in athletics being told that all of the work she's put in for the last 17 years of her life now or whatever is completely voided by the fact that some man somewhere felt like a woman that day and decided to run in the female category, and these three female trans athletes came in first, second, and third. So too bad for you. I don't have to go through any of that. Conservatism is based on a realistic view of people, and that can sometimes be a negative thing. One of the reasons that the government is set up the way it is because human beings can be greedy, and they can be greedy for money. They can be greedy for power. And the acceptance of that as human nature means you build institutional precautions into it to prevent that. the entire idea of progressivism is creating a new person. We've seen it again and again and again. We're going to be a green generation, or we're going to be a pacifist generation, or we're going to be the new socialist man or the new revolutionary man, on and on and on. But you can't beat the biology out of people. And that's why ultimately they have to lose.
Hey, Scott, can I throw in just one thing real quick? As I said this backstage, and I wanted to share with the wider audience, I look at Bernie Sanders, and I understand it must annoy the progressives to no end that America is so awesome that even our communists get rich.
3 houses.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to take a little moment to just kind of reframe things for a minute, because I know I said that progressives must be upset that they're losing all the time, or at least they think they're losing. I'd like to reframe this for the odd progressive, and I don't mean that progressives are odd. I mean, occasionally a progressive might see this show. So the odd progressive watching this show, let's take this for a moment and say, what if we just declared victory, had a parade, and went home? I mean, after all, what you want from this world is less suffering. You want more people to enjoy their food and health care. You want more people to be able to have a decent wage. And the number of people living on $1 a day in the world has dropped so precipitously that there's no other explanation for it other than the fact that capitalism is sweeping the world. And so I know that the average progressive fancies himself as being open-minded, as do we all. Why don't you look at this and say, okay, forget about my philosophy, because my goal here isn't to crown my philosophy. My goal here is to see my compassionate heart fulfilled in the blessing of others. So, and I'm not talking about, I know Steve and Bill are thinking, and our viewers are thinking, no, they're not like that. I'm not talking about the manipulating politicians and the industry that thrives off of using people who are good-hearted progressives. I'm talking about the good-hearted progressives, the people who really want this world to be a better place. All I'm asking you to do is to look around and see how it has become a better place, to see people living longer, to see people who once had incurable diseases that in some cases don't even exist anymore, and in most cases can actually be cured within the means of the person who has that disease, or be provided for by others and taken care of. I want you to look around and see the childbirths without the grieving mother who, in the past, where if you had 10 children, if 5 of them made it to adulthood, you were delighted. I want you to look around the world and see food production massively multiplied so that people are able to eat now who wouldn't have stood a chance and would have died of starvation in infancy in the past. All of this is made possible not by any government program, not by any manipulation of the means of production by an outside force, but by people helping people voluntarily pursuing their interests in a way that benefits others. And frankly, you're probably doing more to fight poverty in your life right now by having one of these than you are by any contribution you can make to a political candidate or even to a charitable organization that's trying to help the poor. There are people who are able to have a decent standard of living right now and who are not up to their knees in manure and water in a rice paddy because you have an iPhone or an Android phone. Because that's how the world works. It's people who are able to do fruitful labor in ways that bless others so that I enjoy what I'm making and the people enjoy who are manufacturing those things. They get to eat as a result of that, and the people who receive the product get to be blessed as a result of that too. I'm not asking you to lose face and bow and scrape and run away and declare that progressivism was a failure. I'm asking you to declare victory and move on. We've won. The world is a better place, and you're in it right now at the best time that has ever existed in the history of the world. God bless it all. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making Right Angle possible.